17 years ago, a movie was released. You may remember the verisimilitude of watching that movie, Gladiator. The movie opens with a scene of winter. The Roman army is getting ready for battle against the Germans. The Germans are on the other side. They're getting ready, and their general, Maximus Decimus Meridius, rides his horse out to his cavalry, and he gives them a speech. Now, if you've ever read Caesar's commentaries, you know that Roman generals would always give their troops a speech before an important battle. And General Maximus was no different. He gave them a speech, and in this speech he told them, what we do in life echoes through eternity. Madam Toastmaster, fellow members, do you believe that? Do you believe what you do echoes through eternity? I believe it. I learned it through my own experience. That experience began more than 100 years ago with a different person. In 1886, Meade Johnson, along with his brother, founded a company known even today as Johnson & Johnson. As you go into a supermarket, you can walk down the aisle and you'll see hundreds of products made by Johnson & Johnson. But that's not my story. Meade Johnson, along with his wife, had an infant. The little baby's name was Ted. Ted had a problem. He was born with a congenital heart defect. And worse than that, he failed to thrive. He wasn't gaining weight. He was getting weaker and weaker. Now, Meade Johnson did what any of us would do, what you would do, what I would do. He consulted the doctors. The doctors would examine the baby, and then they'd approach him and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but the chances are your son Ted will not live long enough to see his first birthday. Now, Meade Johnson was discouraged, but he was a persistent man. He went to doctor after doctor getting the same message until one day he decided to talk to the foremost physician in that field. That doctor's name was Abraham Jacobi. Now, even today, Dr. Jacobi is known as the father of pediatric medicine in the United States. And after examining young Ted, Dr. Jacobi prescribed a formula composed of starch from potatoes imported from Germany and other products, including milk. You mix it together and you feed it to young Ted. Well, Meade Johnson and his wife did so, and young Ted began to thrive. He grew. This formula worked so well that Meade Johnson resigned from Johnson & Johnson and formed his own company. That company made a series of products beginning with that formula. And not only that, but Dr. Jacobi's trained pediatricians became his sales force. And that company grew and expanded and went worldwide. Even today, even though the company was bought by Bristol-Myers in 1968, those products are still on the supermarket shelves around the world, anywhere you look. Then, in 1984, I entered the picture. In 1984, my wife and I had been trying for years to have children. We did have one who was stillborn, but by then, we'd just given up. We decided that we would adopt an infant girl who at that time was born and still in India. And while we were waiting for all the paperwork to get her over here, in July of 1984, we were asked to be foster parents for a newborn child, perhaps a little over a month old. His name was Joseph. Joseph was not thriving. His weight was less than his birth weight. Whenever we gave him something to eat, it would go right through him. I remember at that time, I would put him on a table and change his diapers, and his bottom would be bleeding. We'd have to put salve on it just to stop the bleeding. But my wife started looking for formulas. She tried Similac, she tried other formulas, until one day she found the right formula. That formula was Enfamil, made by Johnson & Johnson. And young Joseph began to thrive. And not only did he thrive, we wound up adopting him. He grew up as a boy, he became a man. And today he lives in North Phoenix with his wife, his adopted son, and his daughter. That's my story. Thanks to Meade Johnson, thousands of infants have lived that might otherwise have died, including Joseph. And what did I do? What have I done with my life? What's going to echo through eternity? Well, as I said, Joseph lives today in North Phoenix, and he has a 9-year-old daughter whom I see every weekend. Her name is Haley, and last summer she caught her first fish. So because of Meade Johnson, to me, to you, remember what you do each day at work, at home, in your community, echoes through eternity. Make it a good one, Madam Toastmaster.